No.
Welcome back to the Vanished Lands. A mountain rises in the heart of the Guyana Highlands, so tall and so strange that those who first saw it could not believe it was real. Its sides are sheer, rising like black walls in the green ocean of jungle below. Its top is flat, hidden by clouds that never seem to move. From a distance, it looks less like a mountain and more like an island, a vast stone fortress cut off from the world. This is Mount Roraima. For ages, no one touched its summit. Generations passed, and the locals spoke of it in whispers. They told of spirits wandering its fog, of a place where time held no power. Some called it the end of the world, others the house of gods. No explorer dared to climb. No traveler returned with proof. Only the mountain remained, shrouded in silence, watching. But how could such a place exist? A land above the clouds, older than the very continents. Rocks there date back nearly 2 billion years, older than the Atlantic, older than the Amazon itself. What secrets sleep in a land so ancient that it remembers a time before rivers carved valleys, before trees covered the earth, before man was even a dream? The first people to live in its shadow, the Pemon and Kappan tribes, believed it was no ordinary mountain. They told the story of a great tree, one that once held all the fruits of the earth. When that tree was cut down, the stump became Roraima. From its wound came endless rains, and the world changed forever. Even today, the clouds that hug its summit bring torrents of water spilling down its cliffs in silver falls that vanish into the jungle. To those who live nearby, the rains are proof of the old tale, proof that Roraima is alive in ways no one could explain. Travelers from distant lands heard the whispers. Missionaries recorded fragments of the legend. Some mocked it, others grew obsessed. They looked at the map and saw a strange shape at the edge of Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil. They wondered if a secret world was hidden above those cliffs. But the walls of Roraima seemed impossible to climb. Vertical, slick, carved by storms and winds for ages. It was as if nature itself had built a wall to guard the top. A prison or a sanctuary. Imagine standing in the jungle, looking up, a black cliff stretching into clouds. Birds circling high above, vanishing into the mist. No path, no ledge, no crack to follow. Just silence and the feeling that something ancient is watching from above. Those who camped near its base often reported strange dreams. Some swore they heard voices carried on the wind. Others said the stars shifted when viewed from the mountain's shadow. It unsettled even the bravest. In the 1700s and 1800s, explorers mapped rivers, jungles, and mountains across South America. Yet Roraima stood untouched, a mystery in plain sight. When asked why no one climbed, guides would simply shake their heads. The mountain did not want visitors. The spirits would not allow it. Men came with ropes and plans, but storms always forced them back. The plateau seemed to defend itself, wrapping itself in fog, sending rain in sheets that turned stone into ice. Some believed Roraima was sacred. Others thought it cursed. What kind of place could stand untrodden for centuries? What secrets waited on its silent crown? Imagine the creatures that might live there, cut off from the rest of the world for millions of years. Creatures unknown to science, plants unseen by human eyes, rivers flowing to nowhere. Was it a world frozen in time, or a world that had moved far ahead of ours? The few who dared approach often returned changed. Hunters told of seeing strange lights flickering above the plateau at night. Traders said their compasses failed near its cliffs. Travelers spoke of fear, so deep it felt like the jungle itself was pushing them away. The mountain loomed in their minds long after they left. Roraima was no longer just a place. It became an obsession. The world outside was advancing. Steamships crossed oceans. Telegraphs carried voices across continents. Yet in South America, a mountain remained locked away, untouched, unmeasured, unclaimed. This contradiction burned in the minds of explorers. If the age of discovery was about conquering the unknown, then Roraima was a last frontier. It inspired wonder and fear in equal measure. Writers heard tales and dreamed. Philosophers debated whether untouched lands like Roraima were reminders of what the world had been before man. Scientists speculated about isolated evolution, the possibility of entire ecosystems sealed off in the jungle below. But the truth remained beyond reach. For centuries, people asked, what lies on that hidden summit? Is it simply stone and mist, or a cradle of life unspoiled by time? Could it hold the remnants of civilizations long forgotten? Or worse, things better left unseen? Even today, as satellites capture images and maps mark its position, the mystery remains. Pictures cannot explain the power of its presence. Stories cannot capture the weight of its silence. Mount Roraima is more than a mountain. It is a question carved in stone. A question that refuses to be answered too quickly. For centuries, no man touched its summit. Locals whispered it was a place where spirits roamed and time itself stood still. Long before explorers ever set their eyes on the towering walls of Mount Roraima, stories had already shaped its identity. In the villages spread across the savannas and dense forests of Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil, the mountain was not just a piece of stone rising into clouds. It was a memory, a warning, a sacred monument written into the lives of the people who lived in its shadow. To the Pemen, one of the indigenous groups of the region, Mount Roraima was far more than a natural wonder. It was a stump of a cosmic tree, a tree so vast it once stretched from earth to the heavens. They told that this tree had carried all the fruits of the world upon its branches. Bananas, papayas, cassava, roots, and medicines, everything humans would ever need to live and survive was bound within that single tree. It was not only a source of food, but the very pillar that connected heaven, earth, and the underworld. This tree was called the Tree of Life, and its roots tied together the order of the world itself. Without it, nothing could exist as it did. But every story that begins with creation carries a shadow of destruction. In Pemen legend, a powerful being decided to cut down this tree. He wanted the fruits for himself, a hunger so deep that it turned into a curse. He took his axe and struck the trunk again and again until the Tree of Life fell. And when it fell, it did not vanish quietly. It brought devastation. Rivers changed course. Mountains shook. The sky wept. Where the trunk had once stood tall, only a giant stump remained, a broken monument that pierced the clouds. That stump is what we call Mount Roraima today. The people believe that the tree's destruction opened a wound between worlds. From that wound came endless rains. It is said that the tears of the heavens never ceased because the balance had been broken. That is why Mount Roraima is almost always wrapped in storms and mist. Its cliffs are rivers in motion, countless waterfalls falling from its sides like silver threads unraveling the sky. Even now, when clouds churn above its summit and rain lashes against its walls, those who remember the legend say it is proof of the old curse. The mountain weeps because the world was torn from its roots. But the tale does not end there. In the silence of savannah, people whispered that the top of Mount Roraima was no ordinary plateau. It was a place forbidden to mortals, a realm where the spirits of the fallen tree wandered endlessly, searching for the fruits that had been lost. Travelers who dared to climb, it was said, would be carried away by storms before they reached the summit. Some would disappear into the fog, never to be seen again. Others might return, but changed, their minds broken by visions. The Pemen spoke carefully of these dangers, warning their children not to stray too close, not even to gaze too long upon the mountain's crown. For them, Roraima was a bridge between worlds. Its summit touched the sky, and its roots reached into the underworld. Spirits of ancestors were said to walk along its edge, sometimes stepping down into the dreams of those who lived below. People would wake with voices in their ears, guiding them or warning them. Some described visions of vast stone mazes, glowing pools, or creatures whose eyes shone in the dark. But these were not dreams of comfort. They were reminders. The mountain held power far beyond human reach, and to disturb it would invite danger. As generations passed, the legend deepened. Hunters in the forest told of lights that flickered along the cliffs at night, like torches carried by unseen hands. Farmers swore that their crops grew strange and restless during the weeks when the mountain was hidden completely in fog. Even the rivers that spilled from Roraima's sides were treated with respect, for they were believed to carry traces of the ancient tree's life. Drinking from them without blessing could bring sickness, or worse, visions that would not end. To outsiders, these might have sounded like tales told to frighten children, but in the villages, the legends carried weight. They explained the storms, the endless rains, the mountains' haunting isolation. They gave meaning to the unearthly silence of the plateau and the mystery of its unclimbable walls. And more than that, they built a shield around Roraima, a cultural barrier as strong as the cliffs themselves. No one dared to test the warnings. The spirits were respected. The mountain was left alone. But humans are curious. Even as legends kept most at bay, there were always those who wondered what truly lay above the clouds. If the mountain was the stump of the cosmic tree, perhaps some of the fruits still grew there. Perhaps treasures or medicines unknown to the world survived on that hidden summit. Or perhaps something far more dangerous remained locked away. The Pemmons spoke of creatures that once lived in the branches of the great tree. Some were gentle, guardians of fruit and water. Others were darker, jealous beings that fed on shadows. When the tree was cut, those creatures had nowhere to go but the mountaintop. Trapped there, unseen by man, they wandered endlessly, waiting. Some believed their calls could be heard in the thunder that rolls across Roraima's crown. Others claimed their forms could be glimpsed in the shapes of rocks and mist. They were guardians now, protectors of what should never be touched. Imagine standing in a clearing as the sun sinks low, the air heavy with the promise of rain. In the distance, the cliffs of Roraima turn black against the fiery sky. A storm builds, lightning flickers in the clouds, and thunder rolls deep and long. To those who hear it, it is not only weather, it is the mountain speaking, the voice of the tree that once connected worlds, a warning that its secrets must remain untouched. The legends did not fade with time. Even when missionaries arrived, writing down what they call myths, they could not erase the reverence in the eyes of the people. The mountain remained a forbidden place. Children were told not to whistle when passing near its rivers, but that might draw the attention of spirits. Travelers were told to leave offerings at its base if they wanted safe passage. Elders spoke of nights when the moon shone so brightly on the plateau that figures could be seen moving along its edge, shadows of the past walking against the stars. It is easy for modern minds to dismiss such stories, to call them superstition, imagination shaped by fear. But when one stands before Roraima, gazing up at cliffs that vanish into clouds, listening to the unending roar of waterfalls, the legends feel different. They feel possible. The mountain has a presence, heavy and ancient, that seeps into the skin. It makes a person understand why the Pemmons saw it not as a mountain, but as the remnant of something divine. In every culture across the world, sacred places carry legends, but Roraima is different. It is not only sacred, it is cut off, unreachable, veiled by storms that shield its summit from casual eyes. The very structure of the mountain invites mystery, a flat world above the jungle, protected by walls no ordinary climber could scale. It feels designed to hold secrets, as though nature itself conspired to hide something away. And when nature hides, humans can only imagine. For centuries, the Pemmons' tales shaped how others saw Roraima. Travelers heard of the cosmic tree and carried the story back to cities. Writers whispered of a plateau where time stood still. Scholars argued about whether such legends were rooted in truth. And all the while, the rains continued to fall, pouring down from the plateau as though the heavens had not stopped weeping since the day the tree was cut. The story of the cosmic tree may be a legend, but it reflects something deeper. It tells of a world connected, fragile, balanced between creation and destruction. It warns of what happens when greed drives one to sever the roots of life. And it leaves behind a reminder carved into stone and cloud. Mount Roraima, the stump of a tree that once touched the sky. Even today, the people living in its shadow carry the memory. They still speak of storms as the mountain's tears. They still watch its summit with caution, knowing it is more than rock. And as long as the mist circle its crown, the legend will never die. Because some places are too mysterious, too powerful, too ancient to belong to man. They belong to the world itself. Mount Roraima stands not only as a mountain, but as a story in stone, a story whispered in the rains and the thunder in the silence of its summit, a story of creation, destruction, and a forbidden realm that waits above the clouds, reminding all who see it that some mysteries were never meant to be solved. There's a mountain that does not rise in slopes or gentle ridges, but instead towers like the wall of a fortress. When one stands at the base of Mount Roraima and tilts the head back, there is no path, no curve, no staircase of stone leading upward. What looms above is a vertical wall of black rock, climbing straight into clouds for more than 1,300 meters. The cliffs are smooth, as if carved by the hand of something ancient. To the human eye, they appear impossible. Impossible to climb, impossible to touch, impossible even understand. The jungle at its feet is alive with sound. Birds cry from the canopy, insects hum in the thick air, and streams rush past the roots of trees. Yet when eyes turn upward to the cliffs, there's only silence. No trees grow on the sheer walls. No vines descend. No bird dares to circle too close. The walls of Roraima are bare, sheer, and unyielding, stretching for kilometers in every direction. It is not a mountain one can walk around with ease, but a barricade that encircles itself like the walls of a prison. Explorers who reached this place in past centuries often stood at the edge of the jungle, staring upward in disbelief. Their journals described the cliffs as though they were the battlements of a giant fortress, keeping something alive inside. Some wrote that it seemed less like a mountain and more like an artifact, built rather than born. The rock faces were so smooth, so vertical, that they appeared as if shaped by design, not by time. What kind of force, they asked, could raise such a structure in the heart of the jungle? The physical terror of Roraima lies not only in its height, but in its defiance of human will. Imagine an explorer setting foot at its base, rope in hand, eyes scanning for cracks or ledges to grip. There are none. The stone is slick from endless rains, its surface polished by centuries of wind and water. Even the most skilled climbers would feel small, powerless, and unwelcome. Each attempt to ascend becomes a battle against the elements. Storms gather, rain lashes, lightning flashes across the cliffs. The mountain does not yield. It resists. It is as though nature built the walls deliberately, raising them higher and smoother than any human fortress. A perfect prison wall, guarding whatever lies on plateau above. Why would nature build such a barrier around one single mountain? What does it seek to protect or conceal? Detectives seek motives, clues, and patterns. When the eyes of science and reason examine Roraima, the questions grow only darker. The plateau is one of the oldest geological formations on Earth, nearly 2 billion years old. In that time, the world has shifted. Seas have risen and fallen, mountains have grown and crumbled. Yet Roraima stands unchanged, a sentinel of stone. Erosion has shaped valleys, rivers, and ridges all around it. Yet the plateau remains with walls as steep and sheer as when it first rose. Why has time spared this mountain? Why do its cliffs appear untouchable when everything else in nature bends, breaks, and falls? To some, the answer lies in chance. Perhaps erosion carved it this way. Perhaps the stone resisted weather where others did not. But to those who have stood in its shadow, the explanation feels hollow. Nature does not build prisons. Nature does not carve walls so smooth and high that no creature can pass. The design of Roraima seems intentional, as though the earth itself wished to separate what lies above from what lies below. The human mind struggles with barriers. Whenever faced with locked doors, hidden rooms, or unreachable lands, the imagination fills the gaps. What is on the other side? What waits beyond the wall? With Roraima, those questions become unbearable. For the plateau above is not just a flat stretch of rock. It is an entire world, sealed and unreachable, suspended in the clouds. The walls are not only stone, they are guardians, preventing the curious from entering and preventing whatever lives within from leaving. Imagine yourself in the position of an early traveler. You trek for weeks through jungle, your clothes torn by branches, your body weak with exhaustion. The air is heavy with the smell of rain and the hum of insects. Then you step into a clearing and see it. A black cliff rising like the edge of another world. It stretches upward until the clouds swallow its crown. The sound of the jungle fades, and for a moment, there is only silence. In that silence, you feel something watching, not from the forest behind you, but from the plateau above. Something hidden behind those impossible walls. Explorers describe the feeling as of standing at the gates of a forbidden city. The mountains seemed alive, not in the way of trees or rivers, but in presence. It loomed with intention. Some turned away immediately, convinced that the climb was cursed. Others felt a strange pull, a need to know what lay above, even if it meant death. But the mountain did not care for human desire. Its walls remained unbroken. The Pemen, whose legends speak of Roraima as the stump of the cosmic tree, saw the cliffs as the scar left when the heavens were torn. To them, the walls were not obstacles, but boundaries. Boundaries between worlds. What existed on the plateau was not meant for mortals. The cliffs were a warning, a divine line drawn in stone. Crossing would mean trespassing into a realm of spirits and curses. Yet the human heart has always fought against walls. Locked doors called to be opened, veiled lands called to be explored. And so, stories spread beyond the jungle. Tales of a lost world above the cliffs traveled across oceans. Some imagined prehistoric creatures untouched by time. Others envisioned forgotten civilizations sealed away in clouds. Writers heard of these walls and built worlds of fantasy. Scientists dreamed of unknown species, evolving in isolation. Every imagination projected its own mystery onto the fortress of Roraima. But one fact remained clear. For centuries, no man could climb it. Storms rained smooth rock, and unyielding height made the plateau untouchable. It stood as one of the last unreachable places on Earth. A reminder that not all mysteries are open to human hands. That some questions remain locked, sealed by nature or something greater. As the sun sets behind the jungle, the cliffs of Roraima turn into towers of shadow. Waterfalls glow in the fading light, silver ribbons spilling endlessly from the hidden world above. The sky darkens, clouds settle, and the mountain becomes a silhouette, black against black, its crown lost in fog. To stand there at that moment is to feel the weight of time itself pressing down. The walls rise not only as barriers of stone, but as monuments of mystery. Why does such a mountain exist? Why would nature carve a fortress with no entrance, a prison with no key? What secret sleeps upon its summit that demands such protection? The questions linger in the silence, unanswered, and the walls remain, rising higher than human courage, sealing a world that belongs to no one but itself. Mount Roraima's impossible walls are not just cliffs of stone. They are symbols of the limits of human reach. Reminders that not every place is meant to be touched. They are the face of the unknown, standing firm against the ages. And as long as they rise, smooth and sheer, into the clouds, the mystery will remain. The fortress will endure. And the question will echo, what lives beyond the wall? In the year 1884, a group of British explorers set their sights on one of the most impossible dreams of their age. Across oceans and through jungles, word had reached London of a mountain unlike any other, a plateau so high and so strange that no climber had ever stood upon its crown. It was Mount Roraima. Its sheer black walls had defied all attempts. Its storms had driven back the strongest expeditions. Its legends had warned men to stay away. Yet in an age of empires and endless ambition, such warnings only fuel the desire to conquer. The expedition was led by Sir Everard M. Thurn and Harry Perkins, names carved into the journals of that time. They came not with the arrogance of soldiers, but with the determination of dreamers who wished to prove that no place on earth was beyond reach. Yet even the bravest of men faltered when the mountain came into view. As the party approached, the jungle opened into a vast plain, and there it was, Roraima rising like a wall to heaven. Its cliffs shone wet in the sunlight, waterfalls streaming down its sides. Clouds pressed against its summit, veiling it in mystery. For many in the group, the sight alone was enough to stir fear. The task ahead seemed impossible. The first challenge was not the climb itself, but the approach. The jungle was thick, every step a battle with vines and roots. Swarms of insects followed, biting and stinging with endless fury. The air was damp, heavy, and filled with the smell of rain. Each night, thunder rolled across the plateau, and the cliffs glowed with flashes of lightning. The men would stare at the walls by firelight, their faces pale. More than one whispered that they were marching toward madness. When they finally reached the base, the true terror of the climb revealed itself. The cliffs stretched upward without mercy. No paths, no breaks, no handholds. Just vertical stones slicked with rain. Water poured in ribbons down its face, drenching the rock until it gleamed like black glass. To climb it meant trusting ropes and iron against a mountain that seemed eager to shake them off. Some of the men faltered immediately. They shook their heads, refusing to step closer. The legends of spirits and curses had crept into their minds, and they believed the mountain itself would kill them if they tried. But the leaders pressed forward. They had traveled too far to turn back. Ropes were thrown against a stone, anchors hammered into cracks where they could be found. Each step upward was a war with gravity, rain, and fear. Men dangled like shadows on the face of the wall. Their bodies pressed against the cold stone as the wind howled around them. The higher they climbed, the more the storm grew. Rain lashed against their faces, blinding their eyes, filling their mouths with water. Hands slipped, ropes strained, hearts pounded. Below them, the jungle fell away into mist. Above them, the clouds hid the summit. Hours stretched into days. Progress was slow, exhausting, dangerous. Some gave up, retreating to the base with trembling arms. Others were injured, dragged back down by companions. Yet still a few pressed onward, inch by inch, as if pulled by something more than human will. The journals tell of moments when the mountain seemed to fight back. Lightning struck near the ropes, sending men clinging tighter in terror. Sudden torrents of water poured from hidden ledges above, drenching climbers and nearly sweeping them from the rock face. More than once, the expedition nearly failed. But at last, through storm and exhaustion, a handful of men reached the top. What they found upon the summit defied reason. The first steps were taken with disbelief, as boots left the cliff edge and pressed onto a surface flat and vast. The air was different there, thin, silent, heavy with moisture. All around them stretched a landscape no one had ever described before. Strange rock formations rose like towers, twisted shapes that looked like the ruins of ancient fortresses. Endless cracks split the stone into labyrinths. Pools of water gleamed in the mist, their surfaces black and still as glass. Some pools seemed bottomless, their depths glowing faintly in the dim light. Plants grew that no one recognized. Small shrubs with thick, waxy leaves, flowers shaped like trumpets, and others that snapped shut like jaws when touched. Insects buzzed that were larger, stranger, and colored in ways unseen below. The explorers felt as if they had stepped not onto the top of a mountain, but into another world. Their journals tell of silence, so deep it unnerved them. The jungle below had been alive with sound, but here the air was hushed, broken only by the distant roar of waterfalls pouring off the cliffs. At night, the silence grew unbearable. Men woke from uneasy dreams, speaking of shadows moving in the mist. Some claimed they heard whispers, faint voices echoing from the cracks in stone. Sanity wavered. Some explorers stared at the rock towers and swore they saw faces carved into them. Others gazed into the pools and saw not reflections but visions, scenes of strange creatures moving beneath the surface. A few refused to drink the water, convinced it carried something unnatural. Days on the summit stretched into something timeless. The explorers lost track of hours as the mist thickened and the sun vanished. Some wrote that they felt watched, as though eyes followed their every step. One man claimed he saw a figure at the edge of the fog, tall and still, but when he called out, it melted into the mist. Whether it was imagination, exhaustion, or something real, no one could say. When at last they descended, their words carried more mystery than truth. They described landscapes too strange to explain, creatures they could not name, and a silence that made their skin crawl. Some refused to speak of what they had seen at all, their eyes dark with memories they wished to forget. The climb had broken them, not only in body but in mind. Back in their homelands, the tale spread quickly. Newspapers wrote of the impossible mountain finally conquered. Scientists demanded samples, maps, proof. But what the climbers brought back was something far more powerful: uncertainty. Their descriptions did not satisfy curiosity, they deepened it. If anything, the first climb of Mount Roraima raised more questions than it answered. For those who heard the stories, one truth became clear. The summit was not just another part of Earth. It was something apart, sealed away by walls not only of stone but of time and mystery. The climb had opened a door, but what lay beyond remained as strange and haunting as the legends themselves. The expedition of 1884 proved that the unclimbable could be climbed, but it also proved something greater. Some places resist not because they cannot be reached, but because they do not wish to be known. Mount Roraima, with its impossible walls and its strange summit, reminded the world that mysteries still live in the heart of the earth. And for the men who stood upon its crown, sanity itself became the price of seeing what was never meant to be seen. The first men who stood upon the summit of Mount Roraima believed they had left the earth they knew behind, for as their boots touched the stone crown of the plateau, they found not the familiar landscapes of valleys and forests, but a world so strange it seemed carved from another reality. The air was thick, heavy with mist, and the silence felt deeper than anything below. All around them stretched endless stone fields, flat yet broken into giant slabs. The earth was split with cracks so wide and so deep that one could not see the bottom. They looked like wounds, as though the mountain itself had been shattered long ago and never healed. Between the cracks rose bizarre towers of stone. They were not shaped like anything natural, but instead stood like twisted monuments, tall spires reaching upward, some smooth, some jagged, some carved by time into faces that seemed to watch in silence. The explorers walked among them in awe, their footsteps echoing faintly against the stone. It was not a summit. It was a city of rock, a maze of endless formations that felt alive. Pools of water rested across the plateau, black and still, as if no wind dared to disturb them. Some explorers leaned close and found that the water did not reflect their faces, but seemed to pull the gaze downward, into depths that appeared endless. They dropped stones into the pools and waited. No sound returned. No ripple broke the surface. The water swallowed without reply. To those who watched, it seemed less like water and more like windows to another world. The atmosphere was unearthly. Clouds rolled over the plateau, breaking the sunlight into fractured beams. Mist wrapped around the towers and spread across the cracks, shifting the landscape until directions blurred. One could not tell north from south or east from west. It was as though the summit existed apart from time and space, a labyrinth without map or end. But it was not only stone and water. Life had found its way here, and what grew on Roraima's summit shocked even the most trained eyes. Botanists in the group bent to study the plants that clung to cracks and pools, and what they discovered was unlike anything in the world below. Strange green pads with sharp teeth that snapped shut on insects, flowers with colors too bright, petals curling into shapes that resembled trumpets or cages, plants that seemed to drink not only water but flesh, slowly digesting what they trapped. Each one was unique, each one unknown. They realized quickly that these species existed nowhere else on Earth. In one journal, a botanist wrote that it was as though they had stepped into nature's laboratory, a place where evolution had been sealed away, allowed to grow apart from the rest of the world for millions upon millions of years. Here, isolation had birthed forms of life untouched by time. The very plants themselves seemed older, stranger, holding secrets no scientist could explain. The explorers debated in hushed voices. How could such life exist? The plateau had stood cut off for millions of years, its walls too sheer for animals to climb, too smooth for seed to spread. If the species were born here, then they had evolved in a world apart, in a cradle of stone and mist. The idea unsettled them, for it meant that the summit was not merely a landscape but a time capsule, a fragment of Earth locked away since the dawn of ages. They wandered deeper across the flat fields, and the silence grew heavier. They noted how the plants seemed to thrive on the edges of pools, feeding on the mist and water, as though adapted to a life unlike anywhere else. Some explorers claimed the plants move when touched, curling as if alive in more ways than simple growth. Others swore they felt the sensation of being watched not by creatures, but by the land itself. The pools reflected the towers in distorted shapes, and in the mist, shadows played tricks. One explorer wrote that he saw a movement on the far side of crack, a figure that stepped behind a stone tower and vanished. Another wrote that the plants whispered when the wind passed through them, a sound like voices carried across the stone. Whether these were hallucinations born of exhaustion or something more, no one could be certain. The longer they remained on the plateau, the more their minds wandered. They spoke of how the place seemed timeless, as if days stretched into something longer. The sky dimmed and brightened, but the mist never lifted and the silence never broke. At night, when the stars could not be seen, they sat in darkness beside the black pools and felt themselves drift into unease. Some could not sleep, others woke with sudden fear, convinced that something had passed close by while their eyes were closed. Botanists continued their work, collecting specimens. They marveled at the diversity, yet felt unease at the strangeness. How could so many unique forms of life thrive in a place so cut off, so barren of soil? Theories grew. Perhaps birds carried seeds long ago, dropping them by chance. Perhaps winds lifted spores to the plateau. But none of these ideas explained the scale of difference. The plants were not variations of known species. They were singular, as if belonging to a different earth altogether. One explorer wrote that standing among the plants and towers was like walking through deep time itself, a vision of a world long past, preserved and protected by impossible walls. The earth below had changed, but here life had gone on, untouched and unbroken, as though the clock had stopped millions of years ago. The phrase "a world lost in time" began to form in their thoughts, but that is what Roraima felt like, a fragment of an older earth, hidden in the clouds. As days passed, the explorers realized how easy it was to lose direction. The plateau spread far beyond what they expected, and the stone towers created mazes without end. Pools reflected false paths, and mists erased their steps. Some feared they would never find their way back to the edge. They marked stones with chalk, but the rain washed markings away. They left branches of plants as signs, but the mist scattered them. It was as though the mountain resisted their presence, trying to erase their movements and keep its secrets hidden. The silence weighed upon them more than hunger or exhaustion. It was not an empty silence, but a presence. A silence that pressed against the ears, made the heart beat louder, made the imagination stir. They wondered if this was why no one had ever climbed before, why the legends had warned them. The mountain did not kill with violence, but with unease, with a slow breaking of the mind. Yet in that silence, there was beauty beyond measure. Strange flowers glowing faintly in the mist, rock towers shaped like ancient guardians, pools shimmering with colors unseen in the world below. The explorers could not deny the wonder. Even as fear crept into their hearts, they had stepped into a realm that felt sacred, forbidden, timeless. When they finally left the summit, their journals carried words of awe and disbelief. They wrote of plants unknown to science, of landscapes too strange for reason, of silence that shook the spirit. Their discoveries would later be studied and cataloged, but their words carried something more, an emotion that no catalog could capture. A sense that Roraima was not just a mountain, but a living world apart. To this day, the summit remains a place of wonder and mystery. Scientists have confirmed what the explorers first suspected. More than half of the species found on Roraima's summit exist nowhere else on Earth. Evolution in isolation has created a kingdom of life unique to this plateau, sealed away for millions of years. A world lost in time, hidden above the jungle, waiting in silence. Mount Roraima reminds us that the earth still holds secrets, that not all has been mapped or measured. On its crown, life has thrived in silence, untouched by the ages. It stands as proof that the past is never truly gone, but preserved in fragments, waiting to be found by those brave or foolish enough to seek it. And as long as the mist clings to its summit and the waters of its pools remain dark and still, the mountain will remain what has always been, a world apart, a world forgotten, a world lost in time. The first explorers who reached the summit of Mount Roraima thought they had stepped into silence, but silence can be deceiving. Beneath the fog and across the cracks of the plateau, there was life. It did not roar or call or fill the air with sound as the jungle below did. It whispered in the movements of plants, in the flicker of hidden eyes, in the quiet splash of something unseen. To walk across Roraima was to feel watched and yet to see nothing at all. Scientists who later followed the path of those first climbers came armed with notebooks and instruments. They expected to find strange plants, perhaps a few insects, but what they discovered was far beyond their imagination. On the summit lived creatures found nowhere else on Earth. Creatures so peculiar that they seemed to belong to another world entirely. Among the most unsettling were the frogs. Small, delicate. Their skin glowed faintly in the dim mist, as if light had been trapped within them. At night, they gleamed like sparks scattered across the stone. Some were no larger than a fingernail, yet their presence seemed vast in that empty silence. Scientists wrote of how these glowing frogs crouched near the pools, motionless, watching. Their eyes reflected the mist like mirrors. To see them was to feel as though the mountain itself had grown eyes, scattered across its surface, blinking in silence. But the frogs were only the beginning. Carnivorous plants dotted the plateau, strange green traps with jaws that snapped shut on insects, their bodies slowly dissolving their prey. Some grew large enough to capture small reptiles, even birds carried by the wind. Explorers watched in uneasy awe as these plants digested life with no sound, only slow movement, their leaves curling tighter until nothing remained. To them, it was as if the mountain itself was feeding, consuming anything that dared to step too close. Insects, too, were different here. Winged creatures glistened with colors unseen in the world below. Some had wings so transparent they shimmered like glass. Others moved in sudden bursts, vanishing into mist as if swallowed by the air. A few emitted faint lights, hovering like ghostly lanterns above the pools. They carried an aura of the unnatural, as if nature had been experimenting in secrecy, crafting forms not meant for ordinary eyes. The scientists cataloged as much as they could, but the longer they stayed, the more unease crept into their notes. They began to feel eyes upon them, not just from the frogs or insects, but from somewhere deeper, hidden in the fog. Men would stop suddenly and turn, certain they were being watched. But when they looked, there was nothing. No bird, no animal, only mist and stone. Yet the feeling persisted, the sensation that something unseen was studying them as carefully as they studied the plants. At night, the feeling grew unbearable. Shadows shifted in the fog, taking shapes that could not be explained. Some explorers reported waking to the sound of footsteps near their camp, soft yet deliberate, moving just beyond the circle of light. Others swore they heard breathing close to their ears as they lay awake, staring into darkness. Yet each time they searched, nothing was there. The plateau remained empty, still silent. One scientist described it as a psychological weight. He wrote that Roraima seemed alive, not in the way of plants or frogs, but as a presence that observed, tested, and judged. The creatures they found were not terrifying on their own, but together they built a picture of a place that existed apart from natural order. He called it a laboratory, a chamber of experiments sealed away for millions of years. Perhaps, he suggested, the mountain was nature's secret experiment, hidden behind impossible walls to evolve in silence. The thought unsettled the group. If Roraima was a natural laboratory, then who was the experiment for? Was it chance, blind and indifferent, or was there some greater intention? They wondered if the strange creatures were meant to remain hidden, never seen by human eyes. The glowing frogs seemed to embody the mystery most clearly. Scientists tried to catch them, to study their light, but often the frogs vanished into cracks, as if the stone itself opened to hide them. Some men swore the frogs appeared in places no one had seen them before, as if they simply emerged from the mist itself. Their glow left after images in the eyes, faint halos that lingered long after the frogs were gone. In time, men began to avoid them, feeling that their gaze lingered too long, too deep. The plants, too, carried an unnerving presence. Watching them feed became unbearable after a time. Their jaws moved with slow purpose, their leaves tightening as if savoring the act. Some explorers imagined that if they stood too long in one place, the plants might turn toward them, reaching not only for insects but for human flesh. The scientists dismissed these fears as nerves, yet in their journals they wrote of dreams filled with vines and teeth, of plants that whispered in hunger. More disturbing still were the sounds that had no source. A splash in a pool when no creature was visible, a rustle in the mist when the air was still. The explorers grew paranoid, certain that unseen eyes moved with them. Some claimed they saw outlines in the fog, figures tall and thin, standing motionless, vanishing the moment they blinked. Were these illusions, tricks of the mist, or something real that the mountain kept hidden? The longer they remained, the more they felt that the creatures were not merely part of the environment, but guardians of it. Each frog, Each insect, each plant seemed designed to watch, to trap, to defend. It was as though the plateau had built its own army, not a beast that roared or hunted in packs, but silent creatures that blended into stone and mist, waiting. The explorers felt not like discoverers, but like intruders trespassing into a place that belonged to another order of life. Even as they collected samples and sketched drawings, the scientists admitted something they could not explain. The creatures of Roraima did not behave as expected. They did not flee and fear humans, nor did they attack. They observed, patient, quiet, unbroken. Their stillness carried a weight that unsettled the heart. It was as if the mountain itself was using them to study the intruders, testing how far man would go, how long he would last. The idea took root among the men. Some began to believe they were part of the experiment now, that the glowing eyes, the silent footsteps, the strange visions were all ways the plateau was learning about them. The thought drove unease deeper into their minds. Some grew restless, others silent. A few spoke of leaving immediately, unwilling to spend another night under the unseen gaze of the mountain. Yet despite fear, awe remained. For every unsettling moment, there was wonder. To witness life so unique, so untouched, was to glimpse the hidden power of the earth itself. Roraima was not simply a mountain. It was a world within a world, a realm where nature had been free to shape life in ways unseen below. Its frogs glowed with inner fire, its plants consumed with silent hunger, its insects shimmered like jewels. To walk among them was to step into a vision of evolution that belonged only to this place. But the questions did not end. How had such creatures survived in isolation for millions of years? What forces had guided their forms, their colors, their strange abilities? Was it chance or something more deliberate? Could the plateau truly be a hidden laboratory, a chamber where nature or something beyond nature tested ideas in secret? To this day, the summit of Mount Roraima remains home to life found nowhere else on Earth. Scientists continue to catalog new species, each more unusual than the last. Yet the mystery has not faded. The eyes in the mist, the silence, the strange sense of being watched, all remain. For those who climb to the summit, one truth lingers. Mount Roraima is not merely a plateau. It is a world alive, a place where creatures belong not to past, present, or future, but to something altogether different. And in its mists, hidden from the world, those creatures still wait, quiet, watching, eternal. At the turn of the 20th century, the strange plateau of Mount Roraima had already gained a reputation in whispers, journals, and half-told accounts from the few who had seen its summit. Scientists brought back words of glowing frogs, carnivorous plants, black pools, and stone towers that seemed carved by something greater than time. Explorers returned with strange stories, some reluctant to speak at all. Rumors spread across Europe, carried through reports, sketches, and the voices of those who had walked in its mists. Among those who heard the tales was a man who knew how to take fragments of mystery and transform them into worlds, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Conan Doyle was already celebrated as a creator of Sherlock Holmes, a master detective stories that unraveled puzzles through logic and reason. Yet beneath his devotion to deduction, he harbored a fascination for the unknown. The reports of Roraima reached his ears, and in those stories he sensed something beyond science, a place untouched by time. A world where ancient life might still walk. And in his imagination, the plateau became more than a mountain. It became a doorway. In 1912, Doyle released a novel that would become one of the most famous adventure stories ever written, The Lost World. In its pages, he described a team of explorers who ventured to the top of a South American plateau. There, cut off from the world for millions of years, they find dinosaurs roaming free, ancient beasts hunting, and tribes of humans living in isolation. The plateau became a stage where creatures thought long vanished, brought to life again in his words. Readers were captivated. The idea that such a place might truly exist stirred the public mind. Dinosaurs had already been unearthed as fossils, but Doyle gave them flesh, teeth, and breath. He gave them a home not in the past, but in the present, hidden on a plateau above the clouds. People looked at maps of South America, at the Great Triangle where Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil met, and they saw not only jungle but possibility. Was it only fiction? Or had Doyle drawn from something deeper? That question lingered then, and it lingers still. He was not the first to hear rumors of strange things upon Roraima. Explorers wrote of landscapes so alien they questioned their own minds. They described silence so deep it felt alive. They noted species found nowhere else on Earth, evolved in total isolation. To the public, these were scientific marvels. To a writer like Doyle, they were seeds of something greater. If new plants and insects could exist there, why not creatures older, larger, hidden? Why not beings from another age, preserved by the mountain's impossible walls? The idea was not far from the truth of what scientists themselves wondered. Geologists had written that the plateau was nearly 2 billion years old. Botanists declared that more than half its life existed nowhere else on Earth. Roraima was already a world lost in time. Doyle only pushed the thought one step further. But there's a difference between imagination and inspiration. Some scholars later suggested that Doyle had read reports from early expeditions more carefully than most realized, that he noted the explorers' hesitation, their words of strange shapes in the midst of eyes unseen, of a world so unsettling they could not explain it. Perhaps he wondered if their silence concealed more than they revealed. Perhaps he believed they had seen things too unbelievable for science, things they dared not publish but only whispered in private. In the Lost World, Doyle filled those silences with monsters. He created Professor Challenger, a character both arrogant and brilliant, who insisted he is proof of prehistoric creatures surviving upon a plateau. The story unfolds with expeditions, battles, discoveries, and a climax where dinosaurs clash with man. Yet behind the fiction lay a real plateau that matched the description too closely to ignore. The novel even named Venezuela as a land of mystery, and readers soon connected the dots. For those who read it in Doyle's time, the line between story and truth blurred. Some wondered if such creatures truly lived on Roraima. Scientists were asked if dinosaurs could survive in isolation. Newspapers debated whether Doyle had only imagined the story, or if explorers had whispered to him secrets not meant for public eyes. The suspense grew deeper because Roraima itself offered no answers. Photographs were scarce. Reports were contradictory. Few had ever stood upon its summit, and those who had often spoke in guarded tones. This silence allowed Doyle's tale to root itself in possibility. The plateau was real. Its walls were real. Its isolation was real. Who was to say what lived there? Even today, the question lingers. When people climb Roraima and see the black pools, the glowing frogs, the carnivorous plants, they understand why Doyle was inspired. The place feels unearthly. Time does not seem to move in the same way. The imagination leaps easily to visions of ancient beasts walking between the stone towers, their calls echoing in the fog. Doyle's story became more than fiction. It reshaped the way people saw Roraima. The mountain was no longer only a geological wonder or a sacred legend. It was now a symbol of mystery, a place where the past might still live. For decades after, explorers returned with Doyle's vision in their minds, searching not only for plants and rocks, but for echoes of his story. Some claimed to hear strange calls in the mist. Others thought they saw shapes too large to belong to birds. These reports were never proven, yet they fed the legend. Science explained what was found on the plateau. Unique species, alien landscapes, a world preserved in isolation. But imagination asked a deeper question. Could there be more than what science admits? Could Doyle's vision have been closer to truth than we allow ourselves to believe? It is tempting to dismiss it as fantasy. Yet history reminds us that the line between myth and discovery is thin. Once, giant bones were dismissed as legends of dragons until science named them dinosaurs. Once, strange lands were thought to be inventions until explorers set sail and found them real. Perhaps Doyle's story was not prophecy, but reflection, a reminder that the world is stranger than we can imagine, and that even the most unbelievable tales may hold a spark of truth. Mount Roraima continues to inspire. Films, novels, and stories borrow from Doyle's vision, showing lost worlds hidden above the clouds. Yet the real plateau remains stranger than fiction. Its creatures glow, its plants consume, its silence unsettles the heart. It may not hold dinosaurs, but it holds life as alien as anything from imagination. And so the question remains, when Doyle wrote of beasts and tribes living atop the plateau, Was he only imagining? Or had he sensed something in the explorers' reports that hinted at secrets they dared not reveal? Was he drawing from silence as much as from fact? The truth cannot be answered with certainty. What can be said is that Roraima is itself a story, a mountain wrapped in mist, guarded by impossible walls. Crown the world that feels apart from time. Doyle only gave that story a voice, one that still echoes today. His lost world may have been fiction, but the mystery of Roraima remains real, enduring, and alive. And when one stands in the shadow of its cliffs, watching clouds roll across its summit, it is not difficult to believe that Doyle's imagination was reaching for something more than fantasy. Perhaps he caught a glimpse of what the explorers had felt, that on the plateau above the jungle, the past and present still walked together, hidden in the mist. Mount Roraima is not only a plateau hidden in clouds. It is a monument older than memory, older than rivers, older than the very shapes of continents. Scientists studying its stone have dated it to nearly 2 billion years. That number stretches beyond comprehension. 2 billion years before man, before forests, before the creatures we know, this mountain already stood. To speak of Roraima is to speak of time itself, a fragment of earth that has endured while everything around it has changed. When one sets foot on its summit, there is a feeling that the land remembers. The cracks that split the stone are scars carved over endless ages. The towers of rock that rise like guardians are remnants of forces long vanished. To walk across Roraima is to step not only into isolation, but into a geological puzzle that science struggles to solve. How could a place so old remain so untouched? Why does the plateau defy the erosion that has shaped everything else? The mystery deepens inside the mountain. Within its summit lie caves formed of pure quartz. These caves stretch for miles, some passages running longer than entire cities. Inside, the walls shimmer with crystals that glow faintly when light touches them. Explorers who entered spoke of corridors sparkling like the halls of another world. Ceilings dripping with quartz so bright it seemed to contain starlight. Pools of pure water collect in the caves. Their surfaces so clear they reflect the crystal walls like mirrors. The silence inside is deeper than the silence above. Every step echoes, every breath lingers. Some say the caves feel alive, as though the mountain itself is breathing in its chambers of crystal. Scientists marvel at these formations, yet they cannot fully explain them. How could quartz grow in such massive structures, stretching for miles, hidden for so long beneath the plateau? Why do some crystals glow faintly, even when untouched by light? Are these natural reflections, or is there something else in their depths, something science does not yet understand? Those who have seen the caves often speak with reverence, as though they stepped into the heart of the earth and found it pulsing with secrets. But even with modern tools, Roraima resists being fully known. Despite satellites, mapping devices, and expeditions, large parts of the plateau remain unmapped. Thick mist conceals cracks, caves, and hidden chambers. Rain floods passages, sealing them off for months at a time. Some regions are so difficult to reach that no survey has succeeded. Even today, scientists admit that the summit is not fully explored. There are corners of Roraima that remain blank spaces on maps, areas where only fog and silence speak. The idea unsettles the human mind. In an age where the earth is measured in satellites and satellites track every shadow, here is a place that remains uncharted, a place where chambers stretch beyond reach and caves lie silent, untouched. What might be hidden in those unmapped spaces? Unknown plants, glowing minerals, strange forms of life that have never seen the world below? The possibilities stir both wonder and fear. Explorers who enter the quartz caves often spoke of unease. They described hearing faint sounds, like whispers carried through the stone. Some reported seeing glimmers of light deep in the passages, lights that vanished when approached. One explorer wrote that he felt eyes watching him from within the crystals, as if the stone itself contained memories of what had passed, whether imagination or reality. The caves carried a presence that no one could deny. The geological enigma of Roraima lies not only in its age, but in its resistance. Rain falls in endless torrents upon its crown, yet the plateau remains. Wind lashes its cliffs, yet the walls stand smooth and unbroken. While mountains around it rise and fall, Roraima endures as though protected by some invisible hand. Scientists explain this as the strength of its quartz-rich sandstone, yet even they admit the perfection of its preservation is strange. It is almost as though the mountain was meant to last, meant to guard whatever lies upon it. Legends from the Pemon people speak of it as the stump of the cosmic tree, a wound left between worlds. When one hears of the quartz caves glowing in silence, it is not hard to see why such legends grew. The caves feel sacred, unnatural in their beauty, alive in their stillness. The mountain's age makes them even more haunting. 2 billion years of time, yet the crystals gleam as though newly born. The thought unsettles those who see them. How could something so old look untouched by decay? In modern times, teams of scientists have tried to study the caves with advanced equipment. Yet many expeditions are forced back by storms and floods. Instruments fail in the mist, batteries drain quickly, compasses shift without warning. Reports of such failures are frequent, leaving researchers with more questions than answers. Some have returned with samples of quartz unlike any found elsewhere, crystals that refract light in unusual patterns, some that seem to carry faint charges of electricity. Whether these are anomalies of nature or signs of something yet to be explained, no one can say. The mysteries do not end with stone. Beneath the plateau, rivers flow unseen, vanishing into cracks and emerging miles away. Some appear and disappear suddenly, as though swallowed by the mountain itself. Geologists admit that the hydrology of Roraima is poorly understood, with underground waterways still unmapped. In the quartz caves, explorers sometimes find entire lakes of pure water, their surfaces black and endless, their depths unmeasured. Drop stones vanish without sound. It is said that some pools are so deep they connect to the hidden veins of the earth itself. Even with centuries of study, Roraima resists certainty. Each discovery raises more questions. Its age defies imagination. Its quartz caves glow with secrets. Its chambers remain cloaked in mist, untouched by light or knowledge. For some, this is the essence of its power. It is a mountain that will not be solved, a place that holds itself apart from the world, offering glimpses but never surrendering the whole truth. To stand upon Roraima is to feel the presence of something eternal, stone that predates the continents, caves that shimmer with crystal, mists that hide chambers no man has seen. The mountain is a reminder that not all can be explained, not all can be measured. Science can name its rocks, test its age, map its edges, but it cannot tame the sense that Roraima belongs to another order of existence. And so, the mysteries remain. A mountain nearly 2 billion years old, its summit carved by time yet preserved against it, quartz caves glowing in silence, stretching miles into the heart of stone, hidden chambers, unmapped and unseen, guarded by mist and storm. Mount Roraima stands as a monument to the unknown, proof that even in the modern world, secrets endure. It does not matter how many samples are taken or how many studies are written. The truth of Roraima lies not in numbers, but in presence, in the silence of its caves, in the shimmer of its crystals, in the mist that shields its hidden places. It is a mystery that cannot be explained, because explanation itself falters in the face of something so vast, so old, and so alive. For as long as it stands above the jungle, Roraima will remain what it has always been, a fragment of time untouched, a puzzle without solution, a world apart. And perhaps that is its greatest power, to remind us that even in an age of science and reason, there are still places where mystery rules and where silence speaks louder than truth. Over the years, men and women have gone to Mount Roraima not only with ropes and supplies, but with dreams of solving its mysteries. Some returned with stories that chilled the blood. Others never returned at all. The mountain has always carried the weight of curses, whispered in legends long before modern explorers set foot on its slopes. And when one looks at the history of expeditions, it is not hard to see why. Climbers have vanished without trace. Entire parties have walked into the mist and simply failed to come back. The jungle below remembers them only in silence, while the mountain keeps its secrets. Sometimes equipment has been found scattered along trails, tents left behind, journals abandoned mid-sentence. No bodies, no answers, only the feeling that the mountain had taken what it wished and hidden it where no man could search. Storms are another curse. They come without warning, rolling across the plateau with a force that seems unnatural. Bright skies will darken in moments. Winds will rise, tearing ropes from rock and throwing men against cliffs. Lightning splits the fog, striking so close that climbers feel the heat. Rain pours in sheets so heavy that visibility vanishes in seconds. More than once, storms have appeared just as climbers reach the summit, as though the mountain itself decided when they were not welcome. Survivors often describe it as if the weather were alive, as if it was not accident but intention. Equipment too seems to falter on Roraima. Radios cut out, compasses spin without reason. Batteries drain faster than they should. Cameras fail to capture images, lenses fogging even when wiped again and again. Some scientists blame the mist, others blame minerals and stone, but explorers whisper another explanation, that the plateau resisted being recorded, that it bent machines just as it bent the courage of men. And then there are the stories of time itself. Survivors from expeditions tell of hours that stretched into days, or days that seemed to vanish like smoke. Watches slowed or stopped entirely. Groups would leave camp and return believing they had been gone for an afternoon, only to find that 3 nights had passed. Others swore that they walked for hours, yet when they stopped to rest, the sun had barely moved. Memory itself seemed fragile, cracking like thin glass. Men forgot where they had walked, forgot what they had said, forgot who had been with them. Some journals contain whole pages of confused writing, sentences that begin but never end, thoughts that trail into nothing. It was as though the plateau played with their sense of time, stretching and bending it until nothing was certain. The strange distortion broke more than schedules. It broke minds. Some explorers returned to the jungle in silence, unable to describe what they had seen. Others returned speaking nonsense, describing events that contradicted each other. One man swore he had been on the summit for a single night, but his hair had gone white as if he had lived years. Another told of walking into a mist where companions vanished before his eyes. He searched for them for days, but when he finally reached camp, he found them waiting, claiming he had been gone only an hour. The psychological weight of Roraima is as heavy as its cliffs. To step onto the plateau is to feel the presence of something vast and unexplainable. It presses against the mind, filling it with unease. The silence is not natural silence. It is watchful. The mists blur vision, erasing landmarks, confusing direction. Even the ground itself feels treacherous, with cracks that stretch into darkness and pools that reflect distorted images. The mind begins to question itself. Am I walking in circles? Did I already pass this tower of stone? Was that shadow real or only fog? Fear grows not from what is seen, but from what is felt. Explorers whisper of eyes in the mist, of being watched every step of the way. Yet no animals appear, no footprints mark the ground. It is as if the plateau itself is the watcher, the presence that studies intruders. The effect is subtle at first, restless sleep, short tempers, wandering thoughts. But it grows. Some explorers write in their journals that they began to hear voices carried on the wind, voices calling their names. Others felt the pull of the pools, the urge to look into them for hours, until they swore they saw faces looking back. Psychologists who later read these accounts wondered if isolation, exhaustion, and fear had broken the climbers' minds. But others asked a darker question. Could the plateau itself warp the human mind? Could a place so ancient, so strange, twist perception, bend time, and shatter memory? The idea sounds impossible. Yet the accounts are consistent. Too many men and women, across too many years, have spoken of the same unease, the same distortions, the same feeling that Roraima does not merely exist. It reacts. Even local guides treat the mountain with caution. They warn of wandering too far from camp, of staring too long into the mists. They speak of spirits that confuse the mind, leading travelers astray until they vanish forever. Scientists may dismiss such words as superstition, but the record of disappearances speaks for itself. Too many names lost, too many expeditions cut short, too many journals ending abruptly. The mountain keeps what it wishes. Those who survived rarely escaped unchanged. Some refused to speak of what they had seen, their eyes haunted. Others could not stop speaking, repeating the same details again and again, as though trying to convince themselves it was real. One explorer returned to his home country, but never entered the wilderness again, saying only that he had walked in a place where time itself did not obey. Another wrote that he had seen the face of eternity in the fog and would never forget it. The curse of Roraima is not a curse in the simple sense of punishment. It is deeper, stranger. It lies in the way the plateau breaks the certainty of reality itself. Clocks, maps, machines, even memory, all falter in its presence. It strips away the things humans rely on to make sense of the world, leaving only confusion, fear, and awe. For centuries, people have called Roraima sacred. Others have called it forbidden. Perhaps both are true. It is not a place meant to be understood. It is not a place meant to be conquered. Those who go often return with cracks in their minds, cracks that no time can heal. And those who do not return are simply added to the silence, folded into the mists that cover the plateau. Mount Roraima stands not only as a geological wonder, but as a riddle that resists being solved. Its storms strike without warning. Its caves remain unmapped. Its walls hold life unlike anywhere else. And its curse lingers, a quiet force that unsettles every soul who dares to climb. The mountain does not kill with teeth or claws, but with silence, with confusion, with the unraveling of the mind. And so it endures, a place of wonder and fear, a plateau older than time, shrouded in mist, guarding its secrets. For those who dream of exploring it, the warning remains. The mountain does not forget. The mountain does not forgive. And those who enter its crown must face not only storms and cliffs, but the possibility that they will lose more than their way. They may lose their sense of time, their sense of truth, even their sense of themselves. That is the true curse of Roraima. It does not need to strike. It waits, it watches, and in its silence, it bends a human spirit until it breaks. Mount Roraima stands today as it has stood for ages, a colossal monument rising from the jungles of South America, its crown veiled in endless mist. To look upon it is to look upon a fragment of the Earth's oldest memory. Its cliffs, sheer and unbroken, rise like the walls of a fortress that has endured storms, floods, and time itself. Nearly 2 billion years have passed since its stone first formed, and yet it remains untouched, unchanged, and eternal. The world around it has shifted. Continents drifted apart, oceans rose and fell, forests spread and vanished, and species came into being only to disappear again. But Roraima endures. Its plateau has remained sealed above the clouds, a separate world cut off from the flow of time. To climb it is to step not only into another place, but into another age. The summit feels like a dream preserved, a landscape frozen in silence while the rest of the earth moved on. From its stone fields cracked like broken glass to its bizarre towers that loom like guardians, the plateau is unlike any other place. Pools of water stretch dark and bottomless, reflecting not the sky but a distorted mirror of something older, deeper. Carnivorous plants spread their jaws in silence. Frogs glow in the mist, their light faint but haunting. Insects shimmer with colors that do not seem to belong to this world. Every step across the summit is a reminder that life here has walked a different path, growing in isolation, evolving unseen, hidden from the eyes of man. And beneath the surface, caves of quartz stretch for miles, their crystal walls glimmering like the veins of the earth. Within them, silence reigns, a silence so heavy it feels alive. Explorers who dared to enter spoke of whispers in the stone, glimmers of light with no source, and pools so deep they could not measure them. Scientists carry samples and notes, yet their reports end not in certainty, but in awe. Roraima holds its truths close, refusing to surrender them even to modern eyes. But what unsettles most is not what isn't discovered, but what remains unseen. Entire regions of the plateau are still unmapped, hidden beneath storms and mists that defy machines and men alike. There are chambers no one has entered, cracks no rope has bridged, pools no light has touched. Even today, scientists admit that large parts of Roraima are a mystery. The thought lingers, if so much remains hidden, what else may dwell there? Explorers have told of storms that rise without warning, of equipment that fails without reason, of time itself bending until hours feel like days and days vanish like minutes. Survivors speak of memories fractured, of journeys that blur, of whispers that creep into their ears when no one is near. Others never return at all, lost in the mist, whether curse or trick of the mind. The result is the same. Roraima takes its toll. It is not only a plateau of stone, but a plateau of questions. Why has it endured for so long when the world around it has crumbled? Why does it resist mapping and measurement? Why does life upon it appear so alien, as though it belongs not to this earth, but to a different one? These questions echo in every account, every journal, every expedition. No answer is final. Writers turned its mystery into legend. Arthur Conan Doyle imagined a lost world of dinosaurs and hidden tribes, a vision that still stirs imaginations today. Yet fiction only reflected what the explorers themselves hinted at, that the summit feels alive, that it feels forbidden, that it feels as though something waits within its mist. And this is the haunting truth. Mount Roraima is real. It rises still, a monument older than memory. Its summit is a fragment of a world untouched since the dawn of time. If glowing frogs, carnivorous plants, and crystal caves exist there, what else might crawl in its shadows? What else might breathe in the silence of its caves? Could there be creatures older than imagination, still surviving in the cracks of its stone, still hidden in the fog? The question lingers like the mist itself, heavy and eternal. For every explorer who dares its walls, there are countless who stand below and gaze upward, wondering what waits above, wondering what secrets the mountain guards, wondering if it is not merely stone, but a boundary between worlds. Perhaps that is the true power of Roraima. It does not give answers. It leaves questions. It refuses to let the human mind rest. It awakens curiosity, fear, and awe all at once. It stands as proof that even in an age where satellites circle the sky and machines measure every shadow, mystery endures. It endures in stone, in mist, and silence. And so the story does not end with what we know. It ends with what we cannot know, with the thought that there are still places on Earth untouched, unbroken, and unexplainable. Mount Roraima is one of them. It waits in silence, crowned in clouds, older than memory, alive with secrets. Mount Roraima is real. Its secrets are not yet written. The question is, who will dare climb again, knowing they may never return? If this journey into the lost world of Roraima stirred your imagination, share it with those who seek wonder. Subscribe to uncover more forgotten legends, more cursed places, more mysteries that refuse to be silenced. Leave your thoughts. What do you believe still waits on the summit above the clouds? Every story shared keeps the mystery alive. Every voice adds to the legend. Stay curious. Stay awake to the unknown. And remember, the world still holds places where time itself dares not move. Places like Mount Roraima,